Hello everyone, welcome back to Blue Fin Aquatics, where we share our knowledge and experience with you. Okay, so on our opener we were talking about medications and what medications that if you are able to choose 5, which 5 would you choose? What we're going to do today, we're going to go through and show you what our 5 that we have in our kit, just to make sure that we cover everything. But like anything else, cure is not as good as prevention. So if you've got prevention measures in place, you shouldn't have to use a lot of these medications. But we're going to go through now and we're going to show you exactly what we use. So first up, what we're going to do is that we're going to show you some medication that we use for our discus. This has been quite a popular topic. So we're going to show you what we're going to be using when it comes to our discus. And we're going to show you the other medications as well in depth to give you a bit of an idea what to use. Okay, so our first one, last week we did speak of the Metrodazole and also Metrogyl, which is basically the same medication, but unfortunately you need to get this from a vet. Generally how we go about here, the vet actually had to come out and have a look exactly what we were doing, so that's possibly the only way you can get hold of it, or unless in a very weak dosage from your fish supplier shop when you're going for looking for aquariums. Now what we've got here, this is the Metrodiazole that we use here, which is the Metrodiazole. Both same name, it does the same thing. So what we basically do with this here, you get it in 2 portions. You get it in a 400 milligram and you get it in a 200 milligram. Now what you've got to be mindful though is that the 200 milligram is what basically works within that tablet. So you work out how many tablets you're going to need to put into your beef mix, which we had up previous videos about putting it into your beef mix. Generally, when we're making up, say, a kilo of beef mix, we put roughly about 10 tablets in there, but we crush them up to basically a fine powder. And these ones that we've got here are 200 milligrams. If you were to use the 400 milligrams, obviously you'd cut that dosage in half down to 5 or 6, depending on how much food you're going to be making. Now, that's what we keep in our arsenal, basically for our discus, and it doesn't hurt to feed your other fish as well, depending on if you're feeding a bit of meat, if they're carnivorous, or if they're basically vegetarians. You can also make a vegetarian mix up too and still put that in there to help with your fish. The next one is the number 2. We don't hear a lot of, but we also use peroxide. Now we all know peroxide is used for hair or for bleaching and so forth, but what peroxide actually does, it helps clean out when you start a new tank. You clean out your whole tank, you wipe it all out with the peroxide and you clean your tank. So that way it'll kill all the bugs and so forth and any germs that may be lingering in the crevices of the tank. So then you basically leave your tank outside for about half an hour or so until it all dries, and that way you can pretty much guarantee that 99.9% everything's been eradicated. Now the next one we're going to be looking at is we're going to look at the Melifex. Melifex we do use. We do have our own makeup of Melifex as well that we do here. But what we basically use it for, that's there basically for things like cloudy eye, fin rot, those sorts of things, and again reading the advice on the directions to know how much to use. The Melifex is quite a good antibacterial that you can put into your tank, but again, make sure you use the right amounts as well. So that's basically number 3 that we do use. But be mindful with all these little tips here and the medications that you do use, it's imperative that you do read the instructions on the back, because you don't want to overdose your fish as well. All right, our next 2 are quite in-depth and quite important actually, because this can really kill your fish if you get it wrong. Okay, so what we're going to go through and show you, okay, this is potassium manganate. Now, you've probably heard about that before. When you mix it with water, it turns purple. So when it goes purple, that means when it's active. When it goes into the tank and give it sort of about 15-20 minutes, it starts to go brown. That means the potassium manganate has done its work, and then the water, therefore, is no use to clearing any sort of bacteria or anything in that, because it's done its job. So basically when you mix it in there, it goes into purple, and then half an hour later it'll go brown, which then it's inactive. So the other thing is to do with the potassium manganate, you've got to remember when you do use this, it can be used also as a very weak, and we do specify and do stress, very weak solution for your discus, which you give them what we call a dip bath. So if they're showing signs of external parasites, anything like that, think about doing a bit of potassium manganate. Now, if we're talking about a 9-litre bucket, okay, what are we putting in is basically about 2 to 3 grams. Yes, it doesn't sound like a lot, but it is, because all you want to do is give your discus a bit of a bath, or any fish for that matter, but the solution has to be very weak. If it's too strong and you get it wrong, you actually kill your fish pretty quickly because they just starve and suffocate. So when you go and use the potassium manganate, make sure it's just very light pinkish color, and all you're doing is basically dipping your fish into the bucket of potassium manganate mixed with water. Put them in there for roughly about 10 to 15 seconds, then take them out. And that should be enough to clear out any external bacteria that they may lingering on them. Now, the other one we do use too here is also the Methylene Blue. Now, this works double action for us. So with the Methylene Blue, what we use that for, we use it for eggs that we are raising ourselves. For example, like if we do angelfish, the eggs there, we can actually keep that in the tank, the Methylene Blue, because that actually gets rid of all the fungus and so forth. So the fungus itself doesn't accumulate around the eggs, but also like with any other fish that do have eggs and so forth, when you do that, make sure you've got plenty of aeration going through the tank, especially if you're trying to hatch the eggs yourself. And also with the the Methylene Blue, it can also be used for white spot and also occasionally too for fungus. But again, we do stress, read the directions on the back, because again, this is highly strong. So again, a weak consistency. Now over time, this won't discolor, but the more you do the water changes, the color of the blue will lessen. So it will go from a very sort of like dark blue, but not a deep dark blue, basically a blue like my shirt. Once it gets down and you take it back further, then the water becomes clear. That is enough. So you should be able to clear it up in a matter of 2 to 3 days, depending on how you're doing your water changes, to bring the, excuse me again, got a bug in my throat. So to bring out the Methylene Blue out of the water. So those 5 things that we do use here, and we think that, you know, apart from anything else that you use in the tank, they're the 5 things that we generally recommend to have, which cater basically for all types of fish. And even leads to say that these also help with your sea fish, if you have sea fish in there with salt water and also fresh water. But again, just be mindful that we're stressing, do use and read the directions on the back. Okay, from there onwards, we do hope this is going to help you in regards to the medication, what we use here and what you can use. But again, just be mindful, you know, to prevent any disease in the tank. It's good husbandry and looking after you and doing water changes, because prevention is better than the cure. So if you can get away using any medication and your fish are looking healthy, just keep it that way, like anything else, because you can stress the fish out sometimes too when you do use this medication. As for the Metrodiazole, that in itself is in their food. So like we said before, every 3 months you can worm your fish that way. And just one other thing to cover too, I'm not sure if people have been heard about it at all, but in the very early days, when we started basically our discus off and so forth, we did have a problem that came through which we couldn't identify, which is actually related to like a black plague for discus. Now, I haven't seen this around for many, many years. And what this does, it basically turns your discus, doesn't matter what color they are, it turns your discus really black, and all their slime coat starts to peel away. So basically they're left with their scales open to infection, bacteria, and a lot of the times they do pass away from that disease. So with the black plague, as I say, you can research it, see if it's still around. I'm sure it is, but remember too, we haven't seen it for now for about 32 years. So, but that's not to say it's not out there. And the other thing too about it is that it's airborne. Now that's another thing to be mindful of. So if you have it in one area, just be mindful that all the tops and everything's covered, because it can be airborne. With our 3 areas where we do have discus, if we were ever to come across that again, then we'd isolate it. But back then we didn't have a very big selection of discus as we do have today. So just something to be mindful of, something to think about. Okay, with that, we'll leave you and hope you got something out of this video. If you like, hit the like button so we can share our knowledge and information to other aquarists if you feel to. Other than that, have a good day and enjoy your fish, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.